reach out and speak with you again. Welcome to another stream of the Everett Reinvented podcast, where we hope to bring you information a little bit about the candidates and the political season coming up and the current issues that are facing Everett political figures right now and the city itself. Tonight we have a chance to talk to Council President Stephanie Martins. I'm grateful to Ms. Martins for taking time out to speak with me tonight. This stream is being recorded on July the 8th, 2025. A little bit about Stephanie. As I remember, she immigrated from Brazil with her family in, I believe, 2005. And I think she was 13 years old at the time. Her father was in the restaurant business locally for a number of years. He eventually relocated to Florida, and the family stayed there in Everett. Stephanie talks about working several jobs while in high school, trying to save for college, which she apparently did, getting a BA from Harvard University. She used her education to help other immigrating families with such issues as immigration, naturalization, maybe small claims courts, paralegal type matters. So Stephanie definitely paid it forward and helped other folks out. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie. She can tell us a little bit more about herself. Good evening, Ms. Martins.
Hello, good evening.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Just roasting a little bit down here in North Carolina. Got up almost to 100 degrees today, and I guess you're under the sweltering heat as well, huh?
We are, but not enough.
Yeah.
We could do a little more.
Oops, what'd you say?
I said not enough. We can do a little more, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. So did I get that bio right? You're a Harvard graduate. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually like right there, the diploma. So that was my bachelor's in government, but I recently just completed my master's in public administration from UMass Boston. And I also have a graduate degree from UMass Boston as well in a separate course, but the work was actually focused on affordable housing solutions. So it really linked to the work that I'm doing in Everett.
And now you're also a businesswoman in the community, right?
Yes.
Now, are you in Everett or are you in Medford?
In terms of real estate?
Yeah.
Oh, and I apologize. My dog is having a moment. So
it's okay. My cat might pipe in any minute too.
No, so I do a lot of things, but one of them, the main thing is I am in real estate. The office was in Peabody, and it's now in Lynn. But I am all over Massachusetts, wherever my clients need me. And funny enough, I've covered more of any other place than Everett. I tend to stay out of Everett.
Well, understandably so. I mean, you've got to walk a fine line. Something we'll get into a little bit down the road here. But so you spread out. The bio information. I got most of it. I think it was Mass Alliance gave you an endorsement way back when.
That was the first time I ran, and there was a lot that happened after that, but also a lot into it that they couldn't fit in there. But I've had a pretty comprehensive, very busy life.
Yeah, definitely, and a lot of ties to the community. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, that you said your father was, or it was written that your father was associated with the restaurant business. Do you have family ties with businesses in Everett?
Not at all, no. So my father actually came here when he was 21. He's now 64. At the time, I was only 3 months old, and he did do a lot of, blue collar jobs. One of them, he was working at a restaurant. He became the manager of the restaurant, and that was the business that was able to sponsor him. So he got his citizenship and was able to get us to the US, my brother and I. And he, at the time, he lived in Framingham, and that's where I went to high school. Sorry, my dog really hates the
No,
neighbor. The neighbor decided to be outside right now. So,
that's fine. It's fine by me. It
yeah,
doesn't bother me a bit.
the restaurant he used to work at in Massachusetts was in Canton, and then he moved to Florida
Ooh.
and he bought a Brazilian bakery. And the latest business he had was a restaurant in Boca, a Brazilian restaurant. And then now
Uh-huh.
he sold the business and moved back to Brazil, and he's moving to Portugal. But so I
Wow.
started living by myself in Massachusetts since I was 17 when he moved to Florida.
17. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I took what I read and hoped it was right. So, but that's why I'm validating it with you. Um, more to the current. So, elected to serve as the president of the city council this time around, and you inherited. You inherited a very difficult job, or you had a tough job at a very difficult time, I should say. A lot up in the air. So, getting into a little bit of the contemporary stuff, more recent, um, obviously there is a dispute right now over longevity funds that the mayor had collected, and you know, under what circumstances we're not entirely sure, but nonetheless, the council is in a position now that they've asked for the money back. There was a no confidence vote that was unanimous. Um, but surprisingly, and I applaud you for it, you were the only person that I know called or suggested a resignation of the mayor. And that took me by surprise on a couple of levels. Number one, I didn't think anybody really would do that uh, on the council. So I think it was a courageous move, and again, I do applaud you for it. I wish everybody stood up and said the same thing as far as the council body, but everybody was reserved. But it also took me by surprise because I know at one time that you used to have a fairly amicable relationship, with the mayor, and you I won't say and supported everything he did, but you were willing to work with him and serve him. So obviously the relationship has changed, and your point of view has changed on really what's good for government. So do you still well? I'll even pass up on that question whether you still feel he should resign, but just in general, is it an appropriate? Is that an appropriate response for the level of misconduct or alleged misconduct that we're seeing now? Do you think um, things are beyond repair?
Mhm. Well, first, I have to say that I've always had, and I continue to have, a very diplomatic relationship. I was never more friendly than I am now. But
Okay,
whenever I encounter a situation that violates the public trust, or that in this case, we were entrusted with the mission to recover public funds, then I have to
right.
activate, and I do that. But that doesn't mean that how can I say that?
It's not personal.
It's not personal. And you will find me, I'm not a polarizing person. I'm always, I'm here and there. You will always find me. I'm not black and white. I look at the issue. I try to isolate the mayor from the issue, and you will see me on different sides of the matter in different circumstances.
Hmm.
So but I'm just saying that to say that the past relationship wasn't like a friendship. I still treat people with the same level of diplomacy, regardless. Though they might not want to be my
Okay,
friends anymore when I
okay,
ask them to resign. But the resignation comes. I don't think there was another response because when we received that 16-page report, and that was the results of an investigation, it was an
Correct.
investigation of three
Yeah.
years that was being concluded, and people have a chance to read, and it's public. You can see the receipts, you can see copies of the conversations, you can see copies
Yeah.
of the numbers. So there was no question there. Whatever people say, there are things that you can't deny. There was money that was taken before the ordinance was in the books. There was money that was taken without the proper paperwork.
Right.
And you can't deny those things. And to me, there's no place in government for somebody that is moving and hiding funds behind the scenes. So there was no other response than this person has to resign. And I would tell you that in my Brazilian roots, we're so sick of corruption in Brazil. And number one, I never thought I would encounter it here. But I'm just like, I'm not dealing with
Welcome
this.
to Everett.
It has no place here, and it's the people's money.
Yeah, you've been in government for a while, so you have to admit, or well, you don't have to admit, but I think you'd agree that we've really seen a transformation in the culture, the way Everett does business as a government. All right, from the corner office. I mean, that's the standard that's been set, and a culture has really pervaded where doing end arounds and skirting, regulation or ordinances or laws seems to become fashionable. So,
And I
if
think that happens when somebody is in government for too long, which is why I've supported term limits in 2021 when we passed it and it got vetoed, and again this time when we passed it again.
yeah,
People
now
became comfortable.
I'm coming back kind of to that mindset about the collusion. Wherever it's a small place, people are so intertwined. Some people have made an industry out of that, and there's certain political figures, believe me, I'm certain wouldn't want to come on this stream, so I have no trouble mentioning their names either. But you take people like former Councilman Latanzi. That family is into the city of Everett for about $500,000 a year when he was sitting on the council, between salaries, between business with True Value and everything. It just got out of hand, but it happened for 2 years running, and nobody blinked an eye. Nobody said a word about it. This is what I'm talking about. The culture has become pervasive in there. That people are willing to collude. They're willing to engage in conflict of interest too willingly, and it's condoned. And that's one thing I don't understand. So it's coming back. That was kind of the underpinning of my question on what you think. If number one, trust is recoverable with the DeMaria administration, or is the system so broke? You absolutely do need a new form of city government and a new leadership, because it starts from the top down, and you can't just take the mayor out. It's going to have to be other people.
So I wouldn't say a different form of government, but we definitely need new leadership, and we need to start over, and we need to review the books, and we need to be careful about conflicts of interest, and we need people to recuse themselves more often than we see. And it is a tough line because, as you said, there are a lot of people that are related that do business together. So it's how do we do that in the most transparent way possible? But I would tell you that, yeah, when the same person's in government for too long, and if they lose the steam along the way, then it's time for a new one. If someone is still holding the same stamina and showing up the same way 20 years later, great, we're making progress. But if you
Yeah.
look around and it's like no one's watching, then it's time for new leadership. If it looks like, Do we have people that show up to work every day? What a difference would that make if the person was actually just working the hours they're supposed to? So when that's not happening, it's definitely
Mhm.
time for new leadership.
Agree. Agree. Thanks for that. Um, Fun question. Fun question for you.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a leading up to a fun question. Um, as council president, and I just quickly before we got together here tonight, um, tried to look up the answer. But as council president, if the mayor becomes indisposed or unable to do his job, what's the succession?
So the council president would become acting mayor, but if it's towards the end of the term, if it's towards the beginning of the mayor's term, then the council president would become the acting mayor, but there would be a special election to replace the mayor. But I have seen more frequently than not, and I love that you have your Aruba background, that the mayor is out of the country. And in any other city, whenever the mayor is out of the country, the council president becomes the acting mayor.
Yeah.
But here in the city, we've seen the chief of staff be mayor more often than the mayor, and the president of the council is never informed that the mayor is absent. And I think the rationale that they use is that in this day and age, you're still reachable over the phone, but can you really solve big problems when you're on the beach smoking a cigar? I don't think so.
But the charter doesn't say that. The charter doesn't allow for that. It's pretty clear cut, uh, as you're saying. All right, so you get a background in law. I have a background in law.
Mhm.
Let's throw a legal question in the air. Let's say a good tort attorney gets a hold of a liability case, all right, against the city of Everett.
Mhm.
Say a light pole fell down, something that would involve the city's liability or something like that. When they get the thing in court, who's in charge of the city when they look back and they find that the mayor was in Aruba, but the council president was not? Who
Right.
holds the liability as the city's leader at that time? If you interpret the charter, strictly, it would fall on the council president, would it not? So, what I'm saying is there needs to be some thought here in things like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, I heard from staff from former Mayor Ragucci that anytime he was out of town, they would send a letter and they had a
Yeah,
very formal, communication. Things
yeah,
were very different. They met with staff regularly. But in terms of what you mentioned, there are some provisions there that are specific as far as what types of responsibilities the acting mayor can actually have. So there are things that still only the mayor can do, even if
yeah.
he's away.
Right,
So it might
right.
happen that some of those decisions still could only be taken by the mayor. But I think the answer would be, well, the mayor's out of town when that happened. We had no mayor.
Yeah, yeah. So it falls. It would, something like that would have to fall on
Exactly.
the council
We
president.
just we just haven't had communication. It's
Right.
been years since we've had communication between the council, so we don't even know when things are happening.
My fun question came to me after we talked on the phone a little bit because after I learned a little bit about you, um, you have upward mobility written all over you. I mean, everything you do, you go in and you keep growing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you grow professionally, personally, and what have you. So I have to ask. You know what I'm going to ask you?
Oh
Did
God.
you at least toy with the idea of running for mayor?
That's an interesting question. Well, I am
Give me an
interested.
interesting answer.
Uh-huh. I'm interested in seeing some things happening in the city. And if there was no one I could trust that was going to push for that, I could consider running because it's one of those, if not you, then who? So
Yeah,
if there isn't that other person, then I would definitely consider just for the passion of seeing some things come through. Because as a
right.
counselor, we're limited. We can write laws, we vote on appropriations, but mostly we bring the concerns of the residents to the table to ask the administration to take action. And sometimes we spend 2 years asking the same question and it doesn't happen. So we feel a little tight. And I'm like, imagine if only we could actually go out there and do what needs to be done. So, yeah, if need be, if it really wasn't happening and there wasn't anybody that we could trust, I don't see why
It's,
not.
it's not out of the question. That's all I was getting
Right,
at. Yeah,
exactly.
no. Well, it's just a curiosity thing. Okay. The last thing that I got, and then we'll flip over and kind of give me a vision of the future. But the last thing I got, of course, created a lot of controversy was the TIF agreement
Hmm.
on the Sophia. Is that the name of the building?
Yes,
What's a Fulcrum? I always forget.
right.
I do remember it's Scott Brown, and I got confused on which Scott Brown it was. I thought it was a different one. But in any event, so I got a couple of questions on that.
Hmm.
Um, it I think it took a large group of residents by surprise that the thing passed. Number one, they went ahead and I can't remember what the final outcome was, 7-4. I did watch the last council meeting, which had to do with the addendum that was to be put on there, which was going to be for lack of a better term, the community agreement of what they would be returning to the city of Everett in
Hmm.
exchange. And by the time I get done watching that meeting, I didn't watch it live. I watched it on tape. But by the time I get done, have you ever been to New York City?
I
I think.
have, yes.
Did you ever see the card game that the guys play on the card called Three Card Monte?
I have not.
It's a hustle game. It's like an eggshell game. They bend the corner of the card or something like that, and they get the tourists coming by at 7th Avenue and Park, and they bet them $10. They can always pick the jack, and the guys clean up on the tourists. Well, that's what I felt like I was watching. As you all were talking about $1.2 million in, and then this money's coming back, and here's the list of things. So I'm curious. It looked as if you itemized and went through that list yourself. Did you? Of the things that they were giving back?
Well, I was part of negotiating the things that they gave us back.
Okay. Okay.
'Cause
And it came to $1.2 million?
it was about 1,000,000 too. Yes. For the
Uh,
first portion, because then they're also returning a portion of their taxes to replenish that fund through the 14 years.
yeah. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far on the semantics of that, but that's one of the things that kind of struck me odd. That they're using this language. We're giving you $1.2 million. As I see it, they're not giving ever nothing. They're taking less than 28 million, and now they're taking 26.8.
Mhm.
They're not giving anything, as far as I'm concerned. All they're doing is giving Everett their money back that they would have had without the TIF. All right. So, but it's the semantics of the things that bother me there. But getting into the different lists of items, um, How much of that is that they intend on putting programs in place for residents or renters? How much? How much of that?
So, just to give a little background, because that was a progression of events of like at least 4 or 5 meetings. And in the initial product that was presented to us, they were asking for a TIF. So, one day we would have a tax base of $3 million. And the only good thing they were bringing was the fact that they were building entirely union and creating jobs for Everett union folks. So we had a lot of pressure from the unions, a lot of the Everett residents that wanted the job.
That's
They
another
showed
question.
up. And then I sat down with union leaders and I told them, I was like, listen, other than you working for 3 years, there's nothing in it for the people of Everett, and I can't vote for this the way this is because some people will die before they see anything or any benefits from the $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I had the conversation with the developer, and I said, listen, if you can turn this into a community benefits agreement where the city of Everett's actually getting something, then we can start having a conversation. And there were a series of adjustments. For example, they wanted to pay out of the affordable units. So we made sure that they were all actual units built in physical units that exist. We made sure that the union jobs were broken down. There was a percentage of commitment to Everett workers being
Can
hired.
I ask you? Can I stop you on that and ask you how you can possibly do that when there's a seniority list with unions? How they can pick Everett residents to plug into that without violating the collective bargaining agreement with the unions?
I am honestly, that's internal to the unions, but it's how we're doing it in the city. And many cities do that. They do require in their community agreements a percentage of women, a percentage of minorities, a percentage of Everett. So, and they
Yeah,
all
but not
make
in
certain,
not
well,
in union positions.
yeah, I'm
They
not
can't
sure.
possibly.
Huh?
I can't see legally how they can possibly do that. But
Well, it's
that's the
within
question for
the,
another day.
yeah, I'm not sure how the unions pick who's going to take the job, but that's what they have to do.
All right.
Well, then we thought about things. So things they could give us, what are the needs that we have that we can ask for to a point where the project is still financeable, because we might ask for things that they give it to us and they can't finance anyway, so it doesn't work. And what are things that are kind of related to their project, and keeping in mind that they're not the Encore, they're not the Craft, so they can't give us like 2 fire trucks that cost $1 million. So I went around asking different departments what they needed. And I also kept in mind the fact that with the casino, for example, they promised, let's say, $5 million to public safety, and they pay that and it goes into the general fund and it disappears and nobody sees that. So I asked them for things that were tangible things that they could just buy and deliver so it wouldn't have to go into the general fund and get lost. And
Uh huh.
also, whatever they donated that was money would go into a separate fund from the city that was managed by the council. So it didn't
Yeah.
get lost or with the decision of the mayor. So from that list, there are 100,000 in scholarships that went to a school fund, 250 going to organizations that will work on job preparedness training, resume training, citizenship classes, 100,000 to add to the 50,000 that the city gave the senior center, the Conley Center, to buy the van to transport the seniors. A mobile command center from the police because they don't have a physical station on that side of town. Another ambulance for the fire department. The ability for the fire department to conduct high-rise training in their building, the equipment, the pay for the overtime. What was the other thing? There were a bunch of things that the police asked too. So some radios, cameras for the bike path, some signs and whatever. And then after that first delivery of those items, going forward every year, a percentage of the taxes they pay would go back into that fund controlled by the council, so we can redistribute. And actually the best item from those items is so they're also creating a fund to produce tax abatement vouchers for seniors that are homeowners in Everett, so they can take that and use that to get a discount on their taxes.
All
So
right. Well,
it wasn't a whole lot, but it was like the best you can get from one developer. And I guess the mission was, we're not asking enough.
yeah. Well, it's something it's definitely something. It's more than
Actually, we asked, because unfortunately, we only find out about the host agreements after the fact when the mayor negotiates them. But imagine if we were making those asks with everybody, especially the big ones, and actually knowing the needs of the community and not just getting, there's
my
a disconnect.
concern.
Yeah.
My major concern
Mhm.
was, that these things go on in perpetuity, so it lasts at least as long as
As long as
the
the
TIF
tip.
agreement does.
Right.
And also that no one time, for example, okay, it's probably a given that the city is going to add another ambulance no matter what,
Mhm.
with or without
Yeah.
the help of the
Well, the
fulcrum.
difference is instead of the taxpayer paying for it, the developer's paying for it.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is it's the staffing of it. So it comes with an expense, is what I'm saying. It
Mhm.
may be a one-time thing, but it comes with an expense, whether you like
Mhm.
it or not. It
Right.
comes with the expense of maintaining it. It comes with the expense of staffing the thing. It comes with the expense of the whatever liability it might have to go on there. So
Right.
I think it's this probably was a poor example for me to pick,
Mhm.
but I just don't want to see people, getting a Trojan horse. They get no first year benefit on a certain program or something like that, and then in year two, there's no money to staff it, there's no money to operate it, and things like that. So I
Yeah.
haven't broke down. I haven't looked at what the agreement was.
Sure.
Again, kudos to you for at least driving the idea forward and getting something, some
Mhm.
sort of concession. And that's what it is. It's
Mhm.
concessions. Get some sort of concessions out of
And
this.
in places like Somerville, for example, they have neighborhood councils where the neighbors get to sit down with the developers. They make those asks, and the developers create a fund that's controlled by those neighborhood councils. So it was kind of like the start of something similar. We're a little behind compared to other cities. And also, the difference with this one, too, is that it's not a building that it's in the middle of the neighborhoods causing major, but it's like
Yeah,
in a dump.
yeah.
All due respect to that area, but contaminated way, on that side of town. So it's not really in the way of residents.
Ideal. Um, Switching streams a little bit, switching
Sure.
sides of the stream.
Yeah.
Uh, just to tickle it a little bit, both you and Councilwoman Smith a
Hmm.
while back had some comments about social media, about the use of social media under the mayor's personal account, the use of social media as a city account, and things like that. Um, and I'd like to take that thought a little bit further. You only have really one outlet, one source um, of information, basically, that's considered official. And that's the advocate. As far as newspapers go, you don't have the Leader Herald anymore. That is, however, one side that might have been, was counterbalancing at least to what's going on there. And to me, the other one is really vanilla. So it seems like the corner office has a corner on the market when it comes to putting media out, things like that. Are you are you still do you still see it as a problem? Um, Maybe you could define it a little better. You were talking about how certain maybe that was Council Smith was talking about how certain pictures appeared and they didn't appear, and things like that. What is with all this social media stuff? What is with Reagan communication involved in all that? Um, Give me some opinions on that.
So the point, I actually had the piece and we co-sponsored. It was Council Smith, Council Garcia, and a couple others, that we just don't think that city funds should be used if the platform is focusing on the mayor specifically. So, for example, if you have the city Facebook account, then that should picture all of the happenings of the city. And if there's an event, the public should be able to see that their counselor was at the event. That
Right.
in our case, and I said that at the meeting, all of us, we have, most of us, some have kids, some have elderly family members. Most of us now, we do have other jobs. So when we make a point to be at the events, we really want our constituents to know that we are
To know
there.
you were there.
We have found is that out of like 98 pictures, there's a picture of the council, and that will be placed last.
Uh-huh.
In that they were focusing more on making it all about the mayor, and it shouldn't be the case with the city account. It should be a general platform to reflect the happenings and provide equal screen time. And then we've also found that if there are specific events that the mayor did not attend and the people had pictures with the council members, that those pictures were not, if he
Uh-huh.
wasn't at the event, then there wouldn't be pictures with the counselors, or
But,
it would be cropped out of pictures, or pictures would get deleted, or specific pictures with no counselors would be the pictures that made it to the paper. And that was a problem because it seemed deliberate, and it's public money and it's not supposed to be delegated like that.
right. And there's a City of Everett Facebook page and there's a Mayor Carlo Di Maria Facebook page. Are those both paid by city funds?
Both are paid by city funds.
And they're
Yes.
both managed by Reagan?
No, so Reagan, it's interesting because online on Facebook, it
Yeah,
did
it's
say at
interesting.
some point that Reagan managed it, but to my knowledge, it was always managed by the staff of the communications team. And also, to my knowledge, from the discussions that occurred some time ago, the mayor had hired Reagan to enhance his image and to respond to certain things that were not the
Yeah,
regular communications things that the city should be paying for.
yeah, definitely. Well, we got obviously an election coming up. You're in. A
I
lot
am
of
here.
people are pulling papers.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting mayoral race, to say the least. I think. Everybody thinks. Are you facing any challenges in Ward 2 right now? Are
I
you running
do
at
have
large?
a challenger, and interestingly enough, he's actually a good friend from the Indian Temple. We had a good relationship, and I was surprised to
Ah,
see that he was my challenger. But mainly, what happened was Counselor Rogers and I have been pushing for the NIP ban to clean up the city.
yeah,
We since I believe it was 2022 when I introduced an ordinance at the request of multiple residents who wrote to me multiple times to ask, what are we doing to clean up the city? I keep finding these nips everywhere. So we introduced this initiative to try to ban the nip bottles. And we've been going through this for years now. But then there's a new movement now of the liquor store owners, and they came up with a challenger to run against me, mainly because they don't want me trying to ban nips.
competition breeds good business. I'm sure you heard that at Harvard
Yeah,
once or twice. So,
right.
um, yeah, stand on the issue if it prevails. I mean, if it makes sense, it will prevail.
Yeah, and it's really not about me. I am acting at the request of multiple residents and parents and people around the schools that they do not want to see this.
Understandable. Yeah, Councilwoman Rogers and I talked a lot about that, as a matter of fact. So I don't want to really rehash it for
Yeah,
purposes of the show here, but it's. Uh, I'll have to borrow her words. It's a very complicated issue.
yeah.
Legally speaking, it's a very complicated issue. There are strong arguments on both sides, but common sense to me in the end I just can't figure out how you can distinguish nips in general against trash in general. Yeah, I mean,
Well, we overwhelmingly see more nips than anything else. So pretty much every tree pit in odd streets, like it's not even a busy street, you see them in the tree pits more than anything else. There are cups and other things that you encounter here and there, but the nips are pretty much on every street.
well, I'm no detective and no
Yeah.
sleuth, but I saw pictures of one pile of nips, and I was looking at it. And I tend to pick out patterns and things, and I could see that out of the, I don't know, 3 dozen or so bottles that were in the pile there were really only 3 brands. And then there was a couple of scant ones there.
Fireballs.
And well, what it told me, no, it was like whiskey, rum, something like that. But it told me it was probably just a small amount of people that go by that spot every single day. And fine, it's not a volume problem, but and again, from the retailer's perspective, and you're a businesswoman, if you own a package store and a good chunk of your change was going to be affected by that. The retail's got a right to be competitive too. So again, it's a complicated issue, but I don't want to dissect it too much. But going forward after the first of the year, we'll presume that you are reelected, and you're going to have some new faces on. There's no question about that. What would you like to see the new council address in 2026? What would you like to say? What's the number one on the list that needs to be done?
Well, first, I have to send some love to my current council members, not only because they trusted me to be president, but this is my sixth year on the council, and this is the first time in the best group that we focused on business instead of politics. Because I have had other groups of people that we wasted so much time fighting each other and egos and opposing things that the work for the people got kind of obstructed. So this time we're all very different, but we are all in our different ways and different neighborhoods and different priorities. We're all working together for the people. So it's been really refreshing.
And this is for you.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not ashamed to say that I was concerned when you took the gavel. I didn't know if you had it in you. I really didn't.
Yeah.
And I do compliment you. I think you did a marvelous job. Knowing the job, number one. Number two, keeping things in order, keeping people moving forward, keeping the legislation moving forward. You showed professionalism, you showed objectivity from what I could see, you showed a little bit of compassion. And even you were even gentle-handed with our public participation speakers, which really needs to be something that needs to be taught to the city government at large.
We have challenging times, like the last meeting you mentioned, when the public is trying to speak
Yeah,
to us
yeah.
in the middle of debate, and then I have to be a little bit more assertive. But in general, I am really passionate about participation and just the
Mm,
public being interested in city government.
mm,
Even when the union guys went there, I went up to the leaders and I told them, I was like, it's great that you're presenting city government to them because they probably didn't even know who their leaders were. So I love when people come to the chambers and they participate. But going to 2026, so I would say the first thing that I hope to see is a council that can work together.
okay.
And we have so much work to do. For example, we have a recess, but I had just introduced the proposal for tax break for landlords that rent below market. So that is something that passed there's a tax break that was approved in 2023 at the state level,
Huh.
and the cities can opt in to provide that. There are two steps to it. The first one is you just opt in to be able to offer it. And the second step, you work on the fine print of who gets it, the residency requirements, what is the income levels, what do they have to show every year, how is that going to look like? So that comes second after we vote on the first thing, and that's pending in committee, and we're going to
Interesting.
take that up in September. So we still have that. We still have the Housing Trust Fund that I created back in 2021, and that is a mechanism that the cities can use to receive and hold funds to be rerouted to how affordable housing measures. And that can be subsidizing rents, as you asked. That could be programs for seniors. That could be repair programs. It does a lot of things. Like anytime you make somebody pay for something, it can go into that. There are also funds at the state level that as a city you can receive into your housing trust fund. So I'd love to see us finally have the board of trustees and start doing that work. Something that is my dream, and it really requires an administration that has the same vision, is that I would love to see new growth, meaning new tax money that's coming to the city, that a portion of that also goes into that trust fund and it's dedicated to going back to keeping the
Hmm.
city affordable. So, and then something that we have been working on since 2021 that I have had countless pieces on the agenda is the distribution of ARPA funds. That those funds were $46 million intended to help us with economic, to bring us back to economic recovery.
A question I purposely avoided in this session, but
How have we distributed that money? What is the accountability? Have we really helped to recover the economy? Do we understand what our economy is? So it's challenging because a lot of these visions that I have, they require an administration that is with it. And it's exhausting to keep pushing. But and then we also have the rezoning of the city that is now pending on the planning board. But when it comes to the council, it has like 96 plus pages of many different things that are going. So we're rewriting and removing some obsolete language, and that's going to change things a little bit. The rezoning of the city,
I love it.
but
Just
many
you're
things.
doing some digging,
Yeah,
definitely doing some digging. Can I put a couple of things on the wish list? Not necessarily for you,
yeah.
but I like to use my platform to get on my soapbox and sing about a few things.
Listen, if I'm alive to work on it.
Two things. Number one's real easy. Fix the senior lunches. It's disgusting that they're serving our our greatest treasures, senior citizens, meals like that. There's no way. What infuriates me, if you cannot see the anger that's building in me,
It gave
is
me the
how
ick
easy.
already.
It can be fixed so easy. So easy. I'm not asking for major legislation. I'm not asking for an act of Congress. Pull that vendor, get somebody new, get some decent food for these people. It's absolutely sacrilegious that an administration allows this to go on, and that's whose feet this lies at.
So
Most
there,
certainly.
there are a few steps to this one, and this is Stephanie Smith's baby. She's been really passionate about this, is that there are meals being wasted, and that's money that's going down the drain. So we need to conduct a reassessment of seniors that actually want to still receive the meals. And then something else that we have identified and spoke about and spoke against was the fact that they were taking the lowest whatever bidder. And at the time, it was like $7 or whatever a meal. I'm like, I can't even buy a Starbucks coffee with
It's
$7.
crazy.
It's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
And
But you
and
can
some,
fix that. You
yeah,
can
and
definitely
some
fix
people
that.
think that we should just discontinue because apparently Mystic Valley offers lunch too, so they don't want to replicate. But there's definitely a procurement challenge there because we did have some quality providers, but then the city didn't want to pay them anymore, or they didn't want to transport the meals a certain way, the way they should. One of them disagreed that he would cook the meals and the city would drive around with them already cooked. They thought they had to be frozen and then the senior could just. So we need a
It's a
manager.
man.
We need
It's a
management.
management problem.
It's a management
Fix
problem.
the problem.
Yes.
I mean, how hard would it be for somebody in charge in the corner office if it's a matter of going down the chain of command and finding out where if there's a disconnect there, do it. Either way, fix the problem because it is chronic and you cannot. I mean, one of the unique things about Everett is that the rumor mill is more accurate than the newspapers ever will be. You know, usually it's the other way around in the rest of the world. Um, and the rumor mill says this somehow is tied to donations or supporters or something like that. And this vendor being kept on and being basically paid to do crap. Because there's some kind of quid pro quo attached here. I mean, that's the rumor mill. That's the allegation. I can't prove it one way or the other. I haven't gone into the campaign finance reports to look for names. I suppose I could, but I don't really have time for it. But I mean, that needs to be fixed. The other thing I would really, really love to see is a confirmation committee for all appointees, all department heads. Now, as I explained, I think when I had Rob Van Campen on, I'll very quickly go over it again, is when I went from being an interim to being one of 3 finalists out in the Metro West for a VSO position. The 3 finalists interviewed in front of the Board of Selectmen, and they voted right then and there. The selectmen made the decision. It was an up and down vote, and bang, whoever they chose was the one that got appointed. It wasn't who the mayor wanted to drive through or anything like that. Yeah, they looked at resumes. I was asked a list of questions and everything else. I would love to see the same thing happen. Why y'all can't put together a confirmation committee like that, make a part of the charter that it has to be done, and then an ethics committee. That's my wish list.
So we do have it in our charter that all of the mayor's appointees do come in front of the council and we have them come to legislative affairs. The challenge is that even if we vote them down, the charter still allows the mayor to appoint them for a period of time without our approval. So we have something that has changed since my time in office is that we require now resumes. We want to So we do get the resumes now. We do ask the questions for the committees that they have to be Everett residents. We do ask that they provide proof of residency, and they do answer questions at the Legislative Affairs Committee. The only challenge, like I said, is just that if they're not approved, the mayor still has this kind of like emergency confirmation behind our backs.
Okay, well, I'm going to play. You heard a backseat driver. I'll play backseat counselor. All right. Go ahead, you be mayor, and you go ahead and continue on and let that person stay in the job. I'm going to pull your funding. I'm going to unfund that position immediately. Let's see him operate then. They start playing ball. But there needs to be a public confirmation of some sort where this is out in plain view. You've got people sitting in department head positions that have no business being there. You know it, and I know it, and the general public knows it. It's ridiculous. That's why you face a lot of the problems you face out on the street is lack of experience.
You know what I think about the department heads is, again, we go back to the problem of lack of management, because we have department heads the expectation would be that the chief of staff is managing the department heads, but because she's busy being mayor, then there's not a lot of meeting and accountability and there's no communication, not a lot of communication with department heads. So people soon find out they can come to work whenever they want. It's not like the mayor meets, for example, I have had multiple encounters and meetings and exchanges with the city engineer to the point that he thought I was harassing him, but it's not about him. It's about things not being done in the city. And the major question isn't anyone watching this? Isn't the mayor of the city sitting with him to ask how the road work is going? And it's a lack of management.
Unreal. Council President, I'm gonna wrap this up.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great chat, and anytime we can bring the real story to the people, you can count me in.